Hello and welcome to the May 10th edition of the SIG Contributor Experience biweekly SIG meeting. A reminder, we do operate under a code of conduct, which essentially says to be excellent to each other, be respectful of your fellow attendees and speakers. We have a doc for notes. If you have any agenda items that you want to cover today, do go ahead and put them in there. Josh, you had volunteered to take notes earlier. You still good to do that? Cool, thank you. And here at the beginning of the meeting, we usually like to offer an opportunity for any new folks on the call to introduce themselves, totally optional. If you would like to unmute or type into the chat to introduce yourself, you are welcome to do so now.
I don't think we have anybody new, do we?
Hello.
Oh, hi.
So hello,
Hi.
folks. Hello.
Yeah.
I'm Yash, and I've been into SIG comms. Caslin helped me out, and yeah, I'm exploring the Kubernetes ecosystem. So
Cool.
happy for the helping out. Thank you.
Yay,
Welcome, Yash.
welcome.
I'm Josh Burkus. I'm one of the soon-to-be emeritus chairs of SIG Contributor Experience.
We just gonna all do introductions because we could do that. We have so few people on the call.
Yeah, might as well.
Sure.
I am Bob, Mr. Bobby Tables, across all the things. Also, hopefully soon to be an emeritus chair.
I'm Chris. I am also a co-chair of Contributor Comms.
And I'm Caslin. I'm a co-chair, co-lead, I think is really the term of the Contributor Comm sub-project. And I don't think there's any hopefully about it, but one of the new SIG ContribEx chairs. Taking over for Bob and Josh. Anyone else want to say hello? Oh, there's one in the chat I'll read aloud. Hello, I'm joining from Nigeria. This is my first time and also exploring the Kubernetes ecosystem. Welcome.
Awesome.
I'm very
Welcome,
excited
Peter.
to have you. Yeah.
Lagos or?
Yo, Lagos, Nigeria.
Cool.
Awesome.
Awesome.
Thank you. Nice to meet everyone.
Nice to meet you.
Thanks.
Cool. So then it's exciting to have a couple of new folks. A little background on SIG Contributor Experience. We are a special interest group within the larger Kubernetes project that focuses on all sorts of aspects of how contributors do their work in open source Kubernetes. So our focus as a group within the Kubernetes project is on making sure that other contributors have a great time contributing to the project. So you'll see a bunch of aspects of that in our meeting today, where we'll go over our various sub-projects and activities that we have going on. It's a little bit of a quiet time right this moment because it's right after KubeCon, theoretically, though we'll see about that. Cool. Shall we dive into the agenda? Any other initial items? I think we're good to go. All right. So first off, events, Contributor Summit news. We did just have the Contributor Summit at KubeCon EU a couple weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago. How did that happen? But that's, yeah. That's all finished up. We did have the retro for that. Took a few notes on things that we want to do next time, and planning for the Contributor Summit at KubeCon North America should be starting up in the next couple of weeks.
Yep.
Probably. Yeah. Nigel's going to be heading that. Who's not on the call today, of course, but he will be the lead of that. So soon there should be an issue coming out that will say we're going to be doing our Contributor Summit planning, who wants to volunteer to help out with that. And folks will need to volunteer on that issue for lead and shadow positions. So news about that will be posted in SIG ContribEx and probably the Contributor Summit channel and around. Cool. And obviously that's kind of a SIG ContribEx thing. Yes, thank you for adding the retro doc link in the notes. Next item, mentoring.
Oh,
Nothing as usual. No updates, at least to the status. Well, actually, I do have one update on that, which is that we did get the annual report doc PR'd in.
Nice.
And we do mention that the mentoring subproject needs some help in that. For context for the new folks, the mentoring subproject really needs some help from someone who's familiar with like program management. The type of help it needs really is coordination of like getting a bunch of folks together working in the same direction on several different kind of sub projects, because there are several different mentoring programs that we try to support. Yeah, and it looks like there's a couple of those mentoring programs that you wanted to mention, Josh.
Oh, just that we have LFX and Google Summer Code
Yeah.
segments currently in progress, and have a couple of SIGs doing projects with both of those programs.
Someone was detected at your front door.
We're not currently doing outreachy, mostly because we really need an outreachy coordinator. The CNCF folks take care of coordinating LFX and GSOC for us. They don't take care of outreachy currently. And so until we have somebody to do that, we won't be doing outreachy. We had somebody to volunteer to do it last year, but then they
Oh, okay. I
had
was wondering.
but then they had a career change. So
That happens.
I was excited as I was putting together the annual report stuff to learn that we do have some documentation about the kind of help that the mentoring subproject needs.
Yeah.
And that is mentioned in the annual report doc, which you can find in the SIG ContribEx repo. You can find the annual report doc in there, which has some links.
Somewhere.
Yeah.
One other thing, just that like I talked to Dawn and Nate a little bit about getting some metrics on the actual like conversion rate of mentees from those programs into maintainers, or at least, you know, further contributors. Talking to some of the leads and other people here, there's been hesitation about getting more involved in the mentoring programs because so frequently the mentees will join, and then basically once that ends, they disappear, or go to like other projects.
we've talked about that some in CNCF level mentoring. And by the way, the holdup with getting stats is that for anybody who's done LFX, you'll know that the LFX software is kind of a disaster. And so the tracking is being assembled by hand in a spreadsheet.
Yeah.
We'll have that when somebody
Yikes.
finishes it.
Actually, if you can link the spreadsheet, I'm happy to add some stuff from the Kubernetes side.
Okay, I'll have to send that to you because I haven't been doing it, so I
Okay.
don't actually have a link. The but we were talking more about some of the other things, like for example, for Kubernetes' priorities, I'm more interested in getting more group mentoring going on, because as usual, Kubernetes has lots of entry-level occasional contributors. What slowed down is people leveling up.
Yep.
And that's what group mentoring is for. And for that matter, the CNCF folks would like to follow us doing group mentoring so that it's something they can teach to other projects.
I have a lot of thoughts there, and can I'm happy to talk, well, like pop by tag contributor strategy or anything like that to talk more about it.
Yeah, I mean, my personal perspective is our current level of participation in things like LSS and GOC are adequate. The other thing that we discussed is that LFX is not necessarily limited to students, just as Outreachy is not necessarily limited to students. And we could be looking at using those programs or simply using the same good first issues, et cetera, that we generate for those programs to do more professional mentoring, as in mentoring of people who have changed jobs that bring them into Kubernetes, or in the case of CNCF, other cloud native projects, and need help getting started as contributors. So, and one would expect those kinds of people to actually have more stick-to-itiveness than the students. Students are just going to have very low conversion rates because you're getting them right when they're about to change their life.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's not many like Nikitas and Bens anymore.
No, it's
There were never many. There were never
I
many.
mean,
Like
yeah.
when we got Nikita, we were actually doing GSOC in a big way.
It's true.
You know, and we were doing like 4 outreach interns a year and a bunch of other things. So Nikita represents like 1 out of 30 people. So the and it's always going to be that way, right? Because
right.
if you're having somebody do the mentorship program right before they graduate, they're not necessarily graduating into a Kubernetes related job.
Yeah. Although it does tend to help people with
yeah,
at least having that experience tends to help people.
Yeah. Well, and part of the idea behind having things like GSOC originally was that it creates an ecosystem, as in you don't necessarily get the student you mentored, but there's now this pool of students who know what contributing to a public open source project is like.
Mm-hmm.
That you might draw from as a contributor, even though they did their GSOC for a completely different project. But the other reason to keep doing these things is that entry-level opportunities are entry-level opportunities, whether we're talking about a student or a person who just finished a code camp, or a person who has changed tech jobs and is now in a job where they are working on something Kubernetes related. In any case, they need the same sort of open door to get into the project. So from a perspective of actually preparing opportunities to help people get started, it's not different. And that's, from my perspective, the main value to our project of participating in these student mentorship programs is not so much the students as it is the fact that it gets SIGs to actually update their good first issues.
Someone was
That's a good point.
Yeah.
I will say, like, we've had a lot of SIGs that have basically stopped doing good first issues just because they get like a good example with SIG CLI, someone literally wrote a bot to scan like the kubectl repo and others just to assign it to them as soon as anything labeled good first issue popped up, and then they never do it.
Really?
Yep.
Has that been escalated anywhere?
I've been talking to Eddie about it. And that is I would not say, let's say, a bot, but that happens relatively frequently where lots of people compete over the good first issues and no one actually follows through.
Yeah.
It
I
becomes
always
like
tell folks, like, don't worry about the good first issues. Just go to meetings and talk to people.
yeah.
They get snapped up immediately.
Yeah. Most of the leads have sort of unlabeled good first issues in their back pocket for people that actually show initiative. Sorry, I know this kind of went on a tangent for a bit.
No, it's
Yeah.
all good.
No, but it is
No, it's
something.
awesome.
So we need to actually bring that up at CNCF mentoring area, because we're exposing the good first issues even more through the new contributor site. And so obviously, and now I'm thinking about the horrors of somebody figuring out how to hook up text generators
Oh, it's already happened. We've been
Yeah.
getting a bunch of Chat GPT generated,
Yeah.
like honestly, just straight up bullshit in the issues for small docs changes. Like I've already banned users from GitHub from spamming that type of stuff.
Okay.
It's almost like we need a Chat GPT check for docs or something.
Well, it's really something where we need a first step. We somehow need a first step that requires a person to actually do something.
Right. Yeah.
The so and but we would need to talk about what that is.
Mm-hmm.
Because on the other
New
hand,
folks.
right, if somebody is particularly like if somebody's attempting to do the good first issue and they happen to be in some unfortunate time zone like Uzbekistan, we don't want them to be blocked from working on it because they're not awake at the time that anybody who could approve them is awake. But on the other hand, how do you tell the difference between a real person from Uzbekistan and a bot from Uzbekistan?
New folks on the call, you're getting a really interesting look at some of the work that we do in SIG contributor experience.
No
I hope you're
kidding.
enjoying it.
Yeah, I mean the problem, the core problem here is that we want to make things easy for new contributors to get started, right?
Mhm.
We don't want there to be barriers in the way that prevent people from becoming a contributor. On the other hand, we also don't want our reviewers and maintainers to be spending a lot of time dealing with spam.
Right.
Yep. Very
Yeah,
difficult
'cause
balance to strike.
GitHub spam controls. Never
The-
thought that would be a thing.
The other thing with regarding the maintainers and dealing with spam is that the more that it occurs, the more that they will just ignore
Exactly.
all that stuff altogether, just because
Right.
it's just becomes the nature of, how much time and space someone can consume in a person's head. And like,
Okay.
this is no longer valuable to me. I'm just not going to do it anymore.
Okay, I think we need to kick that off. And it's also something that we should throw out elsewhere on social media and stuff.
Yeah.
Kind of wish we'd had this conversation
At
a
KeepCon?
while ago, just so I
Yeah.
could send it with my coworkers to Open Source Summit.
Mm.
It
Oh,
seems
yeah.
like there's a few
Yeah.
tracks there when it would be appropriate to discuss that.
Yeah.
The
I've been thinking a lot about this lately, and I'm happy to swing by ContribStrat and other places too to talk more, to brainstorm.
yeah, but
about
I'm
this.
telling you, we don't have any solutions in Contrib strategy either. that
Well,
we haven't already discussed here.
I know there might not be solutions, but
We could
to
talk.
just
Yeah.
try and start thinking more about this.
The and the problem is this is likely to kill Contributor, which is something that potential contributors within Cloud Native look for a long time. Because if it's happening to Kubernetes, it's happening to the other Cloud Native projects.
Mm-hmm.
The what's really annoying is, well, I guess the people who are using bots for this are probably using code they got from other people. Because I'm like, look, you could have taken that effort you put into writing a bot and taken it to actually doing contribution instead.
Right.
But it's probably not their code.
Also, by the way, we used to tweet good first issues every week on the
And-
Twitter account, and they were just gone so fast. There was no point to it.
Yeah.
The,
And
Retweet it and it'd already be taken.
Yeah, pretty much.
The other frustrating thing with that too is like sometimes people will go right from, asking to assign the issue to just like opening PRs, and then there's literally you get 3 or 4 PRs essentially doing the same thing, just because people race to complete it.
Yeah.
yeah, well, and all those single punctuation mark PRs.
Yeah.
I've rejected. Contributor site doesn't attract the level of this because
Seen
people aren't
'em.
really aware that it's
Yeah.
there. But we do get the ones where people are literally correcting optional punctuation.
Mm-hmm.
As in, there could be a comma here, there could not be a comma here. It doesn't really matter, and
Right.
they're changing it. Oh, my favorite is line breaks in the markdown. People moving around line breaks in the markdown, so it looks like they did a PR. Because I actually did, and it was a PR that was supposedly in response to an issue. Did not address the issue at all. Instead, all they did was they put in, they
Oh,
moved all the line breaks around, effectively making it a 1,000-line change. I'm like, no.
Yep. so for some other like stuff sort of related to that, there have been certain, like I'll say it's been frequent in some other countries, but where people basically use like look at the diffs of how many things I've done as like it's the problem with like the chasing the green stars on GitHub, or like dev
Yeah.
stats showing the top 10 list of contributors, people
Mhm.
using that essentially to game employment.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'm sure that's what's going on with the punctuation mark recordings, right?
Mhm.
Is that if you submit a punctuation mark PR to like 16 projects, you have it accepted, it looks like you're a contributor to 16 projects, and then you go apply for your first job.
Yep.
And it's hard to imagine what we could do to disincentivize that, because, you know,
Yeah.
particularly like, you know, if you are maybe doing it from a country where employment is highly competitive, there's like no amount of discouragement we could put in somebody's way that would stop them from doing that.
I think the big thing for us is because people also use org membership for that, and
Right. We've rejected those. Yeah.
We've specifically had a lot through the release team, and I know we've talked about this before, are people that basically join just to get org membership and then stop, or they will literally open up, you know, one PR a year to basically keep the badge without actually doing work.
Also, Yash asking some great questions over here in chat. For one, are we talking about good first issues on Kubernetes project as a whole, or some small components? I think we're talking about it as a whole, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, across the entire, like there's 350 repos in
And the Kubernetes.
in
org.
Kubernetes.
Yeah. Including an org repo.
So,
And he also reviewed some PRs in docs that have been pending for a year and asked, what's the average time for a PR to get reviewed by maintainers?
It completely
Mhm.
depends. Like it's
Yeah.
it's 100% variable from repo to repo, and like project to, like even in some of the larger repos that are owned by multiple groups, the various SIGs have different triage strategies. Like some will meet basically once a week and triage all their issues, where others, it's much more ad hoc.
yeah, the and PRs can be open for a long time if what the underlying PR refers to is something that requires research or debate.
Mhm.
I remember one of my first docs PRs, which was just to put in a list of port numbers requested by various network overlays, took a year and a half to merge because we couldn't get a bunch of the network overlays to verify that this was actually their port range.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's another one that this was a KK one, but it had been in debate since 2017, and it got merged, I think, late last year.
The here no.
Hey,
Yeah.
So anyway, we're
Yeah.
getting off track, I think.
Yeah,
I mean, I think
sorry.
it's pretty on track, honestly.
Yeah, okay.
These are very relevant issues for our SIG to consider, I think.
Yeah.
And I'm learning things.
Yeah, I mean, I think
But
my suggestions on this, because we talked about this a little in there, is when we talk about this at the CNCF level, we also need to talk to GitHub.
Mhm.
I'm talking to them next
and-
week.
Yeah,
It's about some of this stuff.
yeah. I
Thank
mean,
you.
obviously they can't. GitHub can't prevent real people from acting badly, but they might be able to do something about the bots.
Right.
And they might be able to do something about identifying. I'm not quite sure what would be visible. We have to actually discuss it, but I'm thinking about what patterns would indicate that somebody, was, for example, doing mass punctuation mark PRs. Um, so, and then otherwise spread it, because we need a really creative idea here, because it's like a question of, hey, how do we reduce the spamish activity without blocking real potential contributors?
We should do this also as a panel at KubeCon.
Mhm.
Well, CFP is currently open.
I know that was the idea.
Okay.
I like the
Problem is
idea a
that
lot.
if we do it as a panel at KubeCon, people are going to want us to present a solution.
Right. Like, this is how we're gonna fix it.
And if,
Yeah.
if it's a panel, we can talk about the problem. We don't necessarily have to have a solution.
There you go.
If it's a presentation, people will generally want some sort of solution. But
I mean, I think there's also an important message here of folks who are new to Kubernetes. You can't just expect to find a good first issue and do it that way asynchronously without talking to anyone.
Right.
It's very important to actually talk to the people doing the work to try to understand what's going on. And sometimes that takes a long time. And that's just the way it is. And here's why.
Yeah.
I think the
Yeah.
here's why is something that a lot of folks don't get and could really benefit from.
one other thing on that, just train of thought, please, like, people that come and just say like, hey, mentor me, will just get ignored.
Yeah.
It
Like, what are you
happens.
trying to do? What do you want to learn? What are your
It
skill level?
it
Yeah.
happens in the Kubernetes contributor Slack. It happens. I get DMs. It comes across like on Twitter everywhere. It's just like, hey, just
Yeah.
mentor me. And I'm like, it doesn't work that way.
I get that on Twitter often. Yeah. Yeah.
I had to entertain the cat for a second. All right. Shall we move on to our next topic? We can always come back to that at the end.
Yep.
Yeah.
So next thing, contributor comms. Is there anyone here from that group today?
Yeah. So the SIG network spotlight went out yesterday, and Caslin got access to file a service request for Mastodon on Buffer. Awesome. Thank you, Caslin, because my service desk access is gone. Yeah.
Moving
Actually,
along.
One quick thing on that too. For Mastodon, the LF now has their official server. Should we move the Kubernetes one to that one?
We talked about this, and I think based off like their parameters, like it's only a Twitter mirror. We couldn't do unique content between the two. And if it's just a Twitter mirror, there's no real.
And wouldn't Buffer essentially be that anyway? We're putting a message
Right.
in a Buffer and it goes to Mastodon and Twitter.
No,
But
it
when
could be a
people-
different message. It could entirely be a different message.
Yeah, we can. You can edit it
Okay.
and do it separately.
Yeah.
And sometimes you have to because Buffer doesn't have threading.
Right.
So, and also messages on Mastodon can be much longer.
Mhm.
Sorry, Mastodon doesn't have threading. Twitter has threading.
Yeah.
Which you can handle through Buffer.
So yeah, when
Yeah.
you start
And-
getting into like, oh, there's more information we could provide, it's a lot easier to do that on Mastodon.
And also when folks see that it's a Twitter mirror, if you can tell, then folks ignore it. I think.
Unsubscribe, yeah.
So,
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm curious how
Yeah, I
they're
think this is
performing.
a good example of what, how a lot of marketing folks who don't understand the differences between different social media channels
Mhm.
decide that they're going to join Mastodon. It's funny because none of their stuff officially says that it's only a Twitter mirror.
Oh, if you go read the like guidelines or whatever, it's like, this is how we'll set up your account. Done.
Yeah.
At least when I was reading it when it first came out.
Wow, there's no server rules.
Again, it's a Twitter mirror, so.
Yeah. which means also if anybody replies to anything, it's going to go
It's just
completely
coming.
unseen.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that's why we want to have our own account separate from the CNCF one.
Well, importantly, I think it's very important to note this is the Linux Foundation one,
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, the Linux Foundation.
not the CNCF.
Right.
And I think you're seeing what the difference would be there. The reason why there isn't a CNCF one is that they don't want to do it until they can assign a person to it,
Mm-hmm.
because they don't want to do what the Linux Foundation is doing.
Yeah. Yep, so that's where we are with Mastodon.
So yeah,
Any other
I mean,
important things?
getting it added to Buffer, it's $120 a year, which is probably cheaper than running that Mastodon instance, you know?
Yeah. All right. So I think that's it for comm stuff right now. Contributor documentation. Contributor guide, still waiting for code spaces.
Yep.
Dang. It's been a long wait.
It is.
Or for Hippie's thing to actually be ready for people to use it one way or the other.
Didn't know
Yeah,
that was an option.
I would not consider it a
Yeah, I was
Yeah,
about
fair.
to say, I ruled that out a long time ago.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
GitHub
Yes,
code to fail.
or no, GitHub code spaces.
need
gonna
to
say, Bob?
ping Craig.
Who? Oh,
Um,
Craig. Yeah. Good
Craig on
point.
that one.
Let's see. You want me to do it, or Kazan, you want to do it? What do you? Well, whatever.
You've talked with Craig more than I have, but I'm also happy to do it. Whatever.
Okay, I can tag in.
Whatever works.
Arno.
Yeah, how this is work for someone willing to contribute? Do we allow infinite resource consumption, or is just
Oh, they're aware.
okay?
So for code spaces, depending on how we configure it, they will like it wouldn't come from our budget. It would be on them, and every person gets a certain allocation per month.
Mhm.
GitHub, if we say wanted to do a workshop or tutorial, they will give us credits to like run those workshops.
Cool.
We just have to request it ahead of time.
Yeah, that's cool.
So, are we back to some kind of contributor workshop?
No,
Online only.
unless someone wants to do it themselves and run with that initiative, they can do it. But we are just going to be focused on, essentially the contributor course.
Yeah, no, and if we were going to do any contributor workshop type things, it would be updating and sort of helping package contributor workshop so that organizers of KCDs could do one if they wanted to.
Yeah.
That's been a lot more successful than doing one at KubeCon, partly
Okay.
because there's fewer time conflicts. And sort of less general mobbishness. So yeah.
Next item, developer guide. Anyone know anything about that?
There's no updates to it. Honestly, we can
Cool.
probably just strike that one from the template.
Okay.
Um,
I was just wondering about that. I can do that. And then the next one, contributor site.
Yeah, so I'll actually take this one because we did a contributor site hack session at the Contributor Summit. We were not able to get the site upgraded to the current Hugo because we still have major rewrite issues because there is no backwards compatibility in Hugo. But we were able to upgrade it by like 4 or 5 versions to something that at least is currently getting patches. And so that's actually live already. We merged that during the contributor summit. And then we're stuck on that particular version. I don't remember what the number is, until somebody wants to do a rewrite, or for that matter, honestly consider porting this to something else. The
Doxy is nice, but Hugo makes things difficult.
yeah, and
It's the combo platter, I think, that really kind of puts the cherry on top.
yeah, well, and yeah, and both are projects that are being maintained in somebody's extreme spare time.
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately, more members of Kubernetes becoming part-time maintainers won't actually help the situation.
Indeed. Problems continue there, though there is some improvement. So the next item, moderation and media. Nigel isn't on, but anyone want to talk about that? Probably good to go on past that. GitHub management. We've already talked quite a bit about that in some aspects. Anything new?
Arno, do you want to mention potential changes?
Oh yeah, sorry. I'm stepping down as a GitHub admin, I think this month. So transition will happen between. So I will transfer my responsibility to Madav by end of next week, I think, or middle of next week.
It
So
technically
need to
has to
wait.
go.
So we need to send an announcement to Dev, I think, or ContribEx.
Steering has to approve the GitHub admins.
Okay, so I need to send an email to steering, lazy consensus, and we do the transfer.
Yep. Thank you
And
for your
that's
service.
it.
Yeah, exciting to see
Yes.
folks swapping out. Always a good thing. Well, not always, but generally a good thing. All right. Exciting to hear. If that's the only GitHub management thing, then open mic discussion.
So I've opened up a PR to add the SIG ContribEx leads list, as well as the actual SIG ContribEx list to be managed Kate's groups.
Oh, cool.
We can the ContribEx list we can actually export and import into the new one. We just have to coordinate the change. And essentially record make it a procedure, because like we're running into more problems with SIGs that are bumping into various limits. SIG autoscaling has lost access to their leads list.
Ouch.
It happens a lot, actually, because most of these SIG lists were created originally, years ago, and people using their corporate accounts. And when their employer changes, they lose access to the list, and they can't make changes to it. And there's been sort of a slow, some of the SIGs have already started to migrate, but we really should just get something, put together a process for it.
Yeah.
The other thing, and the same reason why we migrated dev, is because once a list hits a certain size, it just gets rate limited anytime you try and send calendar invites to it, and it'll never populate the calendar.
Is that not a bug?
No.
Oh.
That is a design feature to prevent people from spamming.
Oh yeah, good point.
Using public Google groups.
Right.
The rate limits for named accounts like anything that we have at Kubernetes.io is significantly higher, because there's an assumption, since it is a paid thing, that someone is actually being a steward of it and not just creating another group to spam people.
Mm-hmm. Makes sense.
So what's needed there next is like full documentation to help SIG leads actually migrate stuff, and frankly, somebody probably assigned from ContribEx to help them.
Yeah, it will need someone from the Zoom team anyway, because they have to migrate their Zoom account over. But I would say like that should be a goal to try and do by like say year end, is to get all the SIG lists over to managed accounts. That will also simplify a lot of other things for the groups in like just general management, like any leads changes is a change to, it's a PR.
Yeah.
And it also means that say the leads list can just be made up of other named accounts. So you're not having to PR people into multiple places. You literally just add them to like the leads list in one place, and they get all the other permissions they need.
That is an important project.
Yeah.
The other one that I
Mm.
just want to also keep on people's radar is 1Password.
Oh yeah.
Is we still need to do the process and everything around that.
Good points. It sounds like we should talk more later about who might be good folks to help guide others through the mailing list migrations.
I mean, how much of it is PR versus how much of it is Google? Is it all PR?
The creation is all PR.
Okay.
It's just to migrate members. You have to do that through the UI, because the public Google groups, there is no API access.
Right.
So there's no way to just like script getting the list and moving them over. So that is a manual step, and that can only be done by people with admin access to those lists.
Right. Which I'm assuming is a short and probably out of date list too. Or unless it's really short, then it's very up to date.
It's the SIG list, so the owners of the various SIGs.
Oh, okay.
There is a hand up. Arno.
Yeah, just want to mention, we only migrate members, not messages. So I think we need to mention that in the guide.
Yep.
Excellent point.
Yeah, the guide will have to have like, a tombstone being just like the last message sent to the list before it's locked, saying like, hey, everything's over here now.
Yeah.
The other, I'd say, stretch goal out of all this would be to eventually just create actual, and right now this would require steering's help, but to create actual Google Drives for every SIG, because that solves a lot of the permissions issues.
Yeah.
All right. Important considerations. We have 8 minutes left. Next item. Arno.
Bob
Something about-
add something about 1Password, so I'm like,
I
do
did.
want to go?
I added that because
Oh.
Bob mentioned it.
Okay. So basically, I think maybe 2 months ago, I think I had a conversation with Chris and Bob about uploading meeting recording to YouTube. So I'm like, and I remember Bob created a G Drive folder for Kate-Infra. So I'm curious if we can use that to do the upload, and we have one centralized G Drive folder. Sorry.
Yep.
Where?
Nigel has the workflow tested. It just has to be set up.
Okay, so I need to ping Nigel about this.
Yeah, 'cause actually, Chris, I think you helped him on the Zapier side too. Did everything get moved over?
Did it? No, it's not yet because I got to move over stuff from that account still. And did he say he got it working? Or
Yeah, like it's
okay.
currently, like if you go into YouTube, you'll see all the
Oh, I know.
the
I've
ContribEx
seen it.
videos.
I just didn't realize that was through Zapier now.
Yep.
Okay. I will migrate it and off we go kind of thing. So there's a centralized Zapier now. So do I have access to the Google Drive is the question. Because I have to connect up everything. I guess you would have to do that.
I don't know. I'd have to.
Yeah. Let's talk about it later. It's on my list
And
of
I-
things to do, but I'll prioritize it.
And those are only topics in the notes, by the way. So. Any other things that folks want to discuss?
One thing in these more recent things like the migrations and everything else, for our incoming group of ContribEx leadership, that you might want to consider is, towards the end, and one of the reasons why a lot of us realized it was time for us to retire is it's become customary for the contributor experience tech leads to not attend this meeting, which becomes a problem because our last 15 minutes has all actually been tech lead business.
Yeah.
And you might want to talk with your new tech leads and see what's going to be required for them to make the meeting. It's up to the chairs to run the meeting, but the tech leads should be here because this is also where we coordinate tech stuff as well as non-tech stuff. And maybe it's going to mean changing the time of the meeting.
That is a good point. Thank you for bringing up that point. And I'll try to make sure to bring that up later with the other new chairs and leads. And I guess I should create a doodle poll or something. Have to figure out the best way to go about seeing if there's a better time. All right.
Also,
and with that,
just
okay,
go for it. We can talk later.
okay. If we're done though, I can go ahead and wrap up the meeting. Thank you all for coming today, and I hope you all learned something. I know I did. And we'll have this meeting again in 2 weeks. You can find us on Slack until then. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording unless folks want to talk about anything else on the recording. Good to go. All right. Bye-bye, YouTube.